Well, I'll make some serious comments on the coronavirus issue later in the program and answer your question. Keep asking me, can we get rid of Daniel Andrews? But firstly, to China. The leadership of China is going to have to accept two things. Firstly, China can't expect the world to turn a blind eye to its behaviour, nor going to pretend that in a showdown with the West, if the West stick, China can't prevail. Nonetheless, its behaviour has to be singled out. This week we've seen the 71-year-old billionaire Hong Kong media tycoon, Jimmy Lai, arrested as a, quote, dangerous traitor, hell-bent on inciting a colour revolution, whatever the hell that is. Now, Jimmy is Hong Kong's most effective pro-democracy advocate. His humiliating arrest on Monday means that, in relation to Hong Kong and democracy, the Chinese Communist Party is fair dinkum. He was taken from his home in handcuffs, paraded through the newsroom of his popular newspaper Apple Daily, as more than 200 armed police stormed through the building, searching reporters' desks and taking away dozens of files. The pictures tell the story. The charges were vaguely defined, but China will allege collusion with foreign powers. He could face life imprisonment in prison after a trial by judges appointed by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, where this ends, who knows? Because polls in Hong Kong show unwavering support for the democracy movement. Beijing will be wanting to put an end to the 71-year-old's publishing empire, which has relentlessly fought for press freedom against the communist juggernaut. It didn't make any difference to the loyalists at the newspaper Apple Daily. Their Tuesday front page proclaimed, quote, Apple Daily must fight on. Readers queued from the early hours of the morning to buy copies, and its daily print run the day after he was arrested increased from 100,000 to 500,000. At the time of the British handover, remember, in 1997, China committed to one country, two systems. This is now a test for the West. The people of Hong Kong can't be abandoned, nor can the West abandon the principles on which they stand. As an outstanding editorial in the Australian newspaper concluded, quote, as the Chinese Communist Party silences them, it's all the more important for the world to speak out for them. But this is an ominous sign. It is the highest profile arrest under Beijing's new national security laws. But to see police searching through journalists' desks, reading their notes, taking away their notebooks, it's clear how far China is prepared to go to ensure dissent is crushed. How now will they treat the activism of the young people of Hong Kong? They're the next target. If the Communist Party succeeds in shutting them down, there'll be very few voices left. There were to be elections in Hong Kong on September 6. The pro-democracy movement would have walked in. They've been shut down until next year, allegedly because of coronavirus. Pleasingly, the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo described the arrest of the media tycoon as further proof that Chinese authorities had eviscerated, his words, which means disemboweled or depriving someone of something which is essential, had eviscerated Hong Kong's freedoms and eroded the rights of its people. He said, we're going to respond in real ways. Well, last week, America imposed sanctions on a group of Chinese and Hong Kong officials, including Hong Kong's leader, who postponed the elections, Carrie Lam. China condemned the sanctions as barbarous. But make no mistake, they're feeling the heat. While Australia has argued it has serious reservations about the postponement of the elections, the question has to be asked, how does Australia respond to China? Well, the answer is provided emphatically today by the former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, one of the few contemporary politicians who can think independently, with clarity, and doesn't require bureaucrats to provide the notes. Tony Abbott said yesterday that our approach to China, quote, should be one of strict reciprocity, accepting foreign investment, no allowing students in courses with strategic spin-off. And on permitting land ownership, he says we should only allow China or its citizens to do here what they would allow us to do there. Tony Abbott argued, quote, effectively, that means no further Chinese land ownership in Australia. It means Chinese investment only in joint ventures. It means being very selective about academic collaborations. And it means hardly any Chinese higher degree students in maths and the hard sciences. And noting the human rights abuses by China, including the abuse of the Uyghur Muslims in the country's west and the crackdown on democracy in Hong Kong, Tony Abbott tellingly asked, How does a country like Australia cope when its biggest trading partner has become its biggest strategic challenge? Well, Abbott argues brilliantly. 5 years ago, the Chinese President Xi declared in addressing our own parliament that China would be, quote, democratic by the middle of the century. Well, as Tony Abbott rightly said yesterday, you'd be a mug if you thought economic freedoms in China would lead to political freedom. Economic freedoms are simply the prescription for making China richer, not to make the citizens freer. As Tony Abbott said yesterday, with the Communist Party's power unchallenged and with Xi utterly dominant, the prospect of any convergence between China and the West anytime soon is almost non-existent. The new normal is a cold peace at best, and we better get used to it.